Look, up there. It's coming right for us. Everybody take. Everybody take. Everybody take it. Get the fuck out of the way.
Bring the Crunch is the final DLC for South Park The Fractured But Whole, so Ubisoft have gone all out and taken the shackles off. Following on from Dusk Till Casa Bonita, instead of ribbing the vamp culture, Bring the Crunch now takes potshots at summer camp horrors like Friday the 13th. And in true South Park fashion, they have notched it up to the nth degree. The new kid meets up with FastPass, villain turned sort of hero Professor Chaos, and brand new character Mintberry Crunch at Lake Titicaca. All the camp counselors have mysteriously gone missing, and so the group look for clues to discover their whereabouts. What they don't expect to find are blood, guts, dead bodies, and sinister plots spread all over. And that's the most immediately striking thing about this DLC. Bring the Crunch is exponentially more graphic than anything you've seen from Stick of Truth or Fractured But Whole to date. It's actually one of the goriest games we've seen this year, although Agony definitely has that award all to itself for the foreseeable forever. And it's not just the gore either, as some of the jokes are really dark, to the point of being kind of controversial. Casa Bonita certainly had its moments, but after playing Bring the Crunch, it feels closer to the show's macabre wit, unlike anything else before it. Bring the Crunch is also really tough. The battles border on the unfair, enemies will box you in and overwhelm you with numbers, and it has some of the most fiendish puzzles served up yet. So I'd say you need at least 500 might to properly tackle the content here. So that means you don't necessarily have to beat the Fractured But Whole to play Bring the Crunch, but it is recommended, if only to understand how all the mechanics work so you can solve the puzzles. Fortunately, you have a brand new class and character and new moves to help even the odds just a little bit. And we're going to start with Mintberry Crunch because his skills are probably the most confusing, even if they are the most creative. So Crunch will douse his enemies in berries, but he will also douse his allies in mint. Now, if an ally is covered in mint and a berry-scented enemy tries to attack them, that enemy will come up against an impenetrable shield, so cannot damage that ally for one turn. The two-faced Crunch can also make his enemies more susceptible to berries using a cleansing ability which protects allies, as well as a super ability which takes everyone out on the battlefield at once. Now, while I'm a little skeptical of how effective Mintberry Crunch will be when bringing it back into the base game, Bring the Crunch is designed in a way where he's often the most useful and quite regularly the last man standing in your team, something that will happen pretty often, by the way. Final Girl, meanwhile, is a better class than Neverborn, which was previously the best class in the game, in my opinion anyway. Channeling the energy of every girl who has ever survived the horror film, the new kid can throw garden shears to push back enemies, throw out saws like discs which spin around on the ground, causing enemies to bleed out, and a hammer bomb which can send an enemy sailing in any direction on the battlefield. As for the Final Girl's ultimate, you can actually insta-kill several enemies in one go if you're close enough and their health is low. The new kid uses a devastating combo weapon to grisly effect by turning them all into red slush. Brutal. Now, don't get me wrong, Bring the Crunch and the Fractured But Whole still knows how to have a laugh. I mean, any game where you're using your ass to cook s'mores and go fishing isn't exactly taking itself too seriously. There are a few fun diversions you need to break up the action, like taking selfies with ghosts and finding what's anchoring them to the real world, and collecting camp badges so you can get some hidden goodies. Bring the Crunch has a bunch of content. It's all well designed, and it feels like a refreshing and radical departure from every other South Park game to date. It also has one of the best endgame boss battles in an RPG I've ever seen. I loved it. Both mischievous puzzle solving and battle diversity really keeps the content interesting, though some sections were a little bit frustrating, particularly the Sacred Ground battlefield where enemies are continuously revived if they're stood on a particular square, and others where enemies' turns just seem to go on for forever. Battles in Bring the Crunch are much longer due to both the environmental shifts and character abilities you come up against as well as your characters in the game, but it forces you to think about every move very carefully and not just mindlessly tap the button to win. So yeah, Yeah, Bring the Crunch is a brilliant DLC. It shocks, it startles, and almost always entertains, even though it's very different from its source material. Bring the Crunch flows exceedingly well, while still managing to offer plenty of optional content should you want it. Slight battle grievances aside, Bring the Crunch is not only a marked improvement on Casa Bonita, but it ensures now that the Fractured But Whole Season Pass is an absolute must-buy. So to summarize, on the pro side, this is a unique and real departure from any other South Park game. Smart tactical combat, which always keeps you on your toes, well-designed puzzles and side quests to keep the game entertaining throughout. The final girl, for me, is now the best class in the game, bar none, and it has one of the most epic endgame boss battles I've ever seen. Ooh, still gives me chills just thinking about it. On the cons, battles can go on too long as enemies are obnoxiously overpowered. Some of the humor is more divisive and controversial than normal, so be aware of that. And Mintberry Crunch seems a bit out of place in the base game. But we have chosen to give South Park: The Fractured But Whole Bring the Crunch an absolutely solid 9 out of 10. And we tested this on an Xbox One. Now stay tuned for a future video where we're going to do an overall final season pass review of South Park: The Fractured But Whole to tell you why this season pass is worth buying and give you an overview of all the content within it so you can see exactly what you're getting for your money. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to give us a like, comment and subscribe. If you play Bring the Crunch, let us know what you think in the comment section below. Or if you've yet to play any of the South Park DLC, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you tune into Expansive for all the latest news, reviews, trailers, previews and everything else DLC related, and we'll see you next time.